Hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to go on mute.
Can I ask who's hiding behind the phone number that ends in 833?
It is me, Lisa, Steve Durrett.
Oh, hello. Okay, just trying to figure out how many board members are here. That's a bit cryptic for me, anyway.
Yep. You always get the gray phone and get the name on the left.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us.
I know Tim, Andrew, and Bob Haley are the three I think we're waiting on.
Did any of them say they couldn't make it?
Did not hear that any of them would not be able to attend.
Okay. We'll hang out for another minute or so.
And I have to leave at 6 because I have a conflict.
We'll talk as quickly as we can.
Well, we can vote first and then talk about it.
And Lisa or Kim, did I miss something? I know we have IT and Maureen's here for the library. Were there any materials that came out on that or?
They were all the subsequent pages after the agenda. She hid them. And then the police training
Oh, so
document
they
was
were on
separate.
they
And
were on the agenda then. Okay.
mhm.
I
Keep
didn't
scrolling.
scroll. I didn't scroll down.
Keep scrolling.
Hence, the body of the email indicated they were all in one document.
So I didn't read that. So you caught me. Okay.
12:20 on the SAT, Ben got 11:30.
I can go check on Bob. He should be on.
Would you mind?
Very handy to have someone who can run down the hall. That's not too common these days.
I know.
Anywhere for anything.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. All right, so we're only missing Andrew
And Tim.
and Tim. Okay, well, why don't we, in the interest of time, get this party started. I will kick off by reading the usual statement. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Capital Expenditures Planning Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at www.town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: Westborough TV. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay. And the first item on our agenda is the IT department presentation. So, Mark, the floor is yours.
All right. I don't really have a visual presentation, but I have some information. So there's the town hall server room and the fire station server rooms, plural. So the existing cooling unit for the town hall server room is a Mitsubishi 12,000 BTU split unit rated for low outdoor temperatures. It was installed in August 2012 prior to the town hall renovation. At that time, there were two server rooms, one upstairs, which was kind of rigged. We used a window AC unit during the summer and a portable one in the winter, and then one downstairs, which didn't have a window, so a split was the only way. So when the town hall renovation was approved, the following year, the split system was evaluated and deemed to be sufficient for the new server room. So it was repurposed for the new larger server room. However, after the renovation was completed and equipment was put into the server room, it did well enough, but during the summertime, it could only achieve temperatures down into the lower 70s, regardless of set point. Since then, we've had upgrades, we've had additional equipment, and at one point, the best we could do in the summer was high 70s, low 80s. This year, we were able to move some equipment over to the Forbes building. So that helped a little bit. So now summertime temperatures are still in the upper 70s, regardless of set point. So although, you know, we're somewhat out of the danger zone by doing some thermal balancing, it's still not good for a cooling system to be going full tilt all summer long, and it's not good for equipment to be at elevated temperatures. So the fire station, the existing cooling unit for the fire server room is an 18,000 BTU system, and the existing cooling unit for dispatch is a 24,000 BTU system, and both are rated for low outdoor temperatures. They were both installed in 2014 as part of the fire station, the new fire station. However, when dispatch operations were moved from the police station to the fire station in 2016, the thermal load increased significantly. Since that time, similar to the town hall, their summertime temperatures are in the mid 70s, and that's the best it can do. So it's running full tilt all summer long. There have also been issues with condensation pumps, so they've had some failures. And when it did, the temperatures in those rooms spiked to about 100 degrees very quickly. So their primary concern, I mean, they did update their condensation pump, so that's no longer the big issue, but they still have an issue with, you know, we don't have the correct capacity, but the bigger issue is also redundancy. You know, when those things fail and they spike so quickly, I mean, you have 911 in there, you have communications, you have all fire and dispatch operations. You know, to have a little bit of redundancy would be important. So that's sort of the summary of both buildings and where we're at. So originally I'd put them in as a placeholder, not sure how we would tackle this. I think at this point, next step is going to be to get an engineering evaluation and to see how, one, to get a price tag, and two, to see how critical it is to get these updated sooner rather than later. That's it.
I see the placeholder of $50,000. How close do you think maybe that is to reality? I mean, are we like a factor off, or is it, you know, are we the right number of zeros on there at least?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. I think that's potentially high. I think the wild card is going to be at the fire station. I don't think the town hall to upgrade our system would probably, I would say maybe 15 grand tops. For the fire station, with those two rooms, they're in the center of the building, and they got to put up units on the roof. Probably a fair amount of electrical and ductwork. Just a lot of unknowns. Town hall probably wouldn't, might even be as low as 12 or in that ballpark.
Thanks.
Mark, is there any possibility that the equipment, which otherwise runs okay, could be used, say, at town hall? In other words, the bigger unit from the fire station be used at town hall?
Yes, that's true. It could be repurposed. Yeah, but I think they're looking for redundancy. I think they're looking for something that would be in addition to what they already have. I mean, we won't know until we get an engineering evaluation as the best way to proceed.
Yeah, okay, understood.
But even the one at Town Hall could be repurposed for, say, the community building or some other location.
Yep.
Mark, question I had is just, I mean, what's the desired temperature you'd like to have in those? You talked about, you know, high 70s, 80s. What's the desired temperature typically year round for one of these rooms?
Typically, server rooms are set around 68 to 70, and they're able to maintain those set points without going through heavy cycling as we are now. Because even not in the summertime, it's working hard to get down to temperature, except on the colder days.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? All right. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night. Okay, next. Look at that. We started late and we're still running on time. Gotta love it. Next, we have the library. Maureen, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Maureen Amiot, Library Director, and I'm here to talk to you and just give you a quick update on the library renovation project. It's been a long time coming, and if you're not familiar with the project, I just want to give you a quick overview. I know some of you have heard about the project, others of you may not have or may not know kind of the background. So this project actually, we started planning in 2011.
Maureen, I'm sorry. Can I just, Steve, can you, Stephen, can you mute your phone? We're getting a lot of feedback. Thank you.
All set? Okay. So this project actually started way back in 2011. The library trustees hired a consultant to see if we could repurpose some of the space inside the library because we were running out of space. And the consultant's report showed that the library, we couldn't really effectively just pick departments up and move them around the building to give them, you know, one more space and another one less. But mostly because the building is undersized for our current and our future needs, looking out at like a 20 to 30 year planning horizon. So right about that time, actually a few months later, our state agency, the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, announced a grant round for planning and design for municipalities that were looking at renovating or expanding their libraries. So perfect timing for us. We applied, and in June of 2014, we were awarded a planning and design grant. Later that year, we held 12 focus groups with the community. We did an online survey to try and gather as much input as we could from the public about how they use the library, how they want to use the library. And from all of that input and all of the work the consultants did, I wrote our building program, which is a document that describes the library that Westborough needs. It's not site specific, it just describes what we need square footage wise, programming wise, what types of spaces we need, meeting space and seating and all types of things like that. As part of that project, we hired an owner's project manager and an architect to help us come up with schematic designs, very high level schematic designs, and investigating locations for the library, the current site and alternate locations. And we determined through talking with the community and looking at available land in town that the community overwhelmingly wanted the library to remain in its current location downtown. I was very happy about that because I think, and you may have heard me say this before, I'll say it again like 1,000 times. I think it's really something special that this building was built as a library, and for over 100 years, people have come to 55 West Main to go to the library. I've lived and worked in other parts of the country, and that's not the case. So we have deep roots in downtown. So once we were finished with our planning and design, the MBLC announced the construction grant round, and we started working on the construction grant application in 2016. That was submitted in early 2017. And in the summer of 17, the grant awards were announced. At that time, it was announced that we would be receiving a grant, but we were placed at number 11 on a waiting list for funding. So we were a little disappointed not to be in that first round, but we've been sitting on the waiting list now since 2017. We're currently at number 4 on the waiting list because projects that were higher on the list than ours have either begun or a couple of towns voted their project down. When that happens, the money goes back into the grant program and it goes to the next library. So we're currently sitting at number 4. This year, because of COVID, and after discussions with libraries 1, 2, and 3, the MBLC decided to pause awarding any grants for this year. They would have had enough money to award the first 3 on the waiting list. And those 3 municipalities felt strongly that their projects would not pass at town meeting in the middle of a pandemic. So so MBLC is continuing to fund the projects that are currently under construction, but did not award any new grants this year. So what that means for us is we expect now to be notified in summer of 2022 that our funds are available. Once we receive that notification, we have 6 months to get our local approval of the project, which means we would be at the October 2022 town meeting, looking for the town to approve it. Once it's approved, we would spend about a year doing design development, bidding, and searching for our temporary site. So figuring we would move into our temporary location around the late 2023. Construction usually takes about 2 years. So that would put us to somewhere around 2025, end of 25, beginning of 26 for completion. So what you have in the documents that I prepared ahead of time is also a request for some money to redo our cost estimate in FY22, since we'll be expecting to get our grant that year. We wanted to redo the estimate just so when we go to town meeting in the fall, we're going with the most current numbers. But we also want to take a little bit of time to do some additional focus groups and online survey, make sure that the plans that we developed in 2016 still are the desire of residents in 2022. And if we need to tweak our design, we're able to do that within certain parameters. We can't completely throw it out and start over, because the grant that we received is based on the high level schematic that we presented. However, there is a little bit of flexibility in there for us to make some changes. And I anticipate that there will be some changes once we start looking at the design. So we were asking for some money to redo that piece of it, and then to be able to go to town meeting with the most current numbers. The amount of the grant will not change. That is set because it's based on the cost estimate from the original project. And that is just under 9.5 million. The project was estimated to cost right around $23 million. So the other thing that I explained in the paperwork is that it would be funded, the feasibility study and design would be funded through free cash, and I said other, which the library trustees are willing to help pay for some of that out of library trust funds. And the same with construction. The trustees are planning to contribute money from our trust funds, and our nonprofit Westborough Public Library Foundation has pledged to do a capital campaign to help offset some of the costs of the project as well. So they have ambitious fundraising goals so that it won't be all on the taxpayer. So between the state grant, the foundation, and the trust funds, it'll be a really great value for the town when the time comes for us to do it. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
Are there any questions?
Hey, Maureen, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you said you're gonna look at the cost again. I mean, it's been several years, you know, you're talking 23 million. I mean, is it gonna be 25 million? I mean, you know, I mean, it's been a couple of years since you came up with the cost, so does anyone have a?
It's hard to know, Bob. We factored in escalation for 3 years into the original cost estimate. So that put us at 18, 19, that put us at this year. So it should be fairly close. We've talked to our architect a couple times in the meantime, and he felt pretty confident that construction costs have not escalated as much as we feared that it might. So we're hopeful that if there is escalation, it won't be dramatic, let's just say.
Okay. It just, you said the trustees were gonna use free cash for some of the costs. Is that what they were planning on doing that?
No, I mean for the cost estimate, we would be asking for an expenditure from free cash, and the trustees would pay for part of that out of our library trust funds.
And do the trustees have any estimate as to what kind of tax impact it would be? Like when you're gonna borrow the money, there's gonna be some impact on the budget. Do they have any idea what the impact?
We haven't worked that out with the finance team yet. That was something we were waiting for. We were waiting for it to get a little bit closer and to work it into the long-term capital plan to be able to answer that question. So no, I don't know the answer to that right now.
Okay, thanks.
Just a thought, the failed school project is significantly more expensive than we thought it was 3 years ago. And so I think it would be good to plan perhaps a year before you expect to get the project moving to fund some money for an architect to do a new budget for the project, so that we don't go into the town meeting with a number that's not sustainable.
Yeah, I agree.
And is that, so I agree with Steve and Maureen, sounds like you agree, does that 100,000 you're asking for, in essence, for 22, will that cover that piece, or is that additional cost? So I guess I'm looking at this as where budget, this is a capital expenditure for the 100,000 would be for, you know, the fiscal year starting July 2021. And then you're expecting the grant to be July of 2022 with a request then for the borrow basically in the fall, so October of 2022 as well, which is fiscal year 2023. So back to that, the 100,000 that you have in the request now, will that cover that, you know, updated cost estimate that Steve talked about, or would that be an additional amount necessary.
We think that would be enough to cover the new cost estimate.
Okay, perfect.
My only comment is that 2025 sounds so far away when you say it, but now I'm realizing that I've been hearing about this since 2014, and I can't believe that was 6 years ago. So okay, it's only 5 more years. I guess we're almost there. It's just crazy how elastic time is.
Yeah, and
Took them for some time.
we were saying that too, that we started planning, like we had the consultant come and do the space study in 2011, and it will be 2026 by the time the project is done. It's like such a long timeline, but it will be so worth the wait, and it will really meet our needs for the duration.
Yeah, the space study actually predates my living in town. I think, oh no, it doesn't. Now I'm losing track. I dropped a decimal there. But it predates my days on the town boards, so I didn't hear about it until a little bit later. So I haven't been living with this in my head for 9 years, but 6 of them, and so we're halfway there. It's great.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Any other questions from the committee? All right then, great, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Okay, look at us moving along on schedule. Next we have police department.
I have to go, Lisa. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Chief.
Good evening, Chief.
So I'm not sure where you want to start. I did talk to Kimberly before the meeting. I don't know if we can start with the building project because there've been some issues with it that I'd like to kind of discuss, where we pushed this off to FY24 before COVID and the current climate happened. We were working with state officials. There was going to be a grant that came out for over $1 million. So the project, it was enhanced considerably because this was going to not just be used for our region, but also for the academies in our area. So right now, we don't know if that grant money is available. So if that was the case, we've already pushed this out, this project. Now, if that was the case, we would scale it back most likely. It wouldn't be, where you see it now. Seeing that we were looking at over $1 million in grant money potentially. So, I mean, I don't know if you want us to answer specific questions, but right now there are so many unknowns. We're just not prepared to go forward. We may have to push this off again to FY25. We don't know. Like I said, this is very trying times, especially funding sources, to see if there's going to be any monies, available for Westborough. So to get into this specific project with so many unknowns, I think it may be wasting, our time. But that's just my thoughts. The deputy chief and I would be happy to answer any questions. He's very involved with this project. He's done a phenomenal job. We, created a foundation that hasn't been able to raise funds, just as Maureen was saying. For the library, we're thinking outside the box to offset costs in any way possible. But it's just been very unique times. And for us to present to you, a $1.75 million project, I don't think, we'd be doing you justice right now. I think we just don't have enough answers. But we'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Jeff, you answered a bunch of my questions because I know have been involved with this and knew the potential for the grant, and so you answered that piece. Because I did have the question of whether if the grant was not available, would we scale this back, et cetera, which you just addressed as well. But I guess if you're still thinking of, kind of within this next 5-year time frame potential for this, even at a scaled back, it may make sense to at least talk about it. I'll look to other committee members, but it may make sense to talk about it, at least briefly, to talk about what your looking to do here and reasons why. I know those are the materials, but at least that's my thinking. As
We
part
do
of our
have
capital
a
planning.
couple of new people, so it might be helpful just to give some of maybe just give some of the background, refresh our memories on the why, the why, the where, and the what, and then we'll take it into account that it may next year not look the same when you come back to present. It may come back in a slightly different form with a slightly different number, different, but just if you could just kind of bring us all back up to speed for a couple
Right.
minutes, that would be great.
DC, do you want to take the mic?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if I hope you've looked at some of the literature that I passed along with Kim, some of the documentation, explaining liability reasons and some of that. I won't get too deep into that. I think, some of what I wrote in my little paper explains it pretty well historically. Supreme Court decisions, police training, liability issues. So little background, the range where it currently is on town property behind the DPW. I'm about to start my 26th year on the police department. It's been there as long as I've been here. It's basically a telephone pole with a cable going across it. We hang some targets on it and we shoot at it. It's very static. It's very stationary. I just passed the torch recently, but I was a lead firearms instructor for the police department for about 15 years. So it's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I understand the importance of it. I understand the liability behind it. With the changes that have come up over the past, really decade and a half, as far as the types of training we're supposed to be doing, the mandates, unfunded mandates, of course, by the state, as far as the amount of training we're supposed to be doing with firearms training. We're supposed to be doing judgmental training, shoot, don't shoot training, all sorts of different things that our range just doesn't have the capability to do. Not to mention the environmental impact of having an outdoor range firing into the ground for the past, probably 30 years. There's an environmental impact there. And a major part of this project was to clean up the site of the current range. It was also to build a new range that was going to have what they basically is called a bullet trap. So you shoot into this, big steel trap. It traps all the rounds. There's no lead contamination. There's no further environmental impact. It actually all gets cleaned up and it gets recycled. There was a lot of work done in the types of target systems that were going to be installed. They're turning targets, they're moving targets. So it really plays a big impact into the judgmental part of, shoot, don't shoot. The target turns and you have to make a decision. It's not, you're just standing static on a line. You already see what the target is. You already made a decision what you're going to do. So there's really a lot of moving parts to it. It started out as, it was really just going to be a local project. Didn't really have, top of the line equipment, but we had some good equipment. It was going to be a pretty good improvement. The further we got into it, the further I've learned that, we have to do some zoning changes. It's going to require a public meeting. It's going to require a town meeting to change the zoning of it, because right now it's not zoned to have structures built on it. The state got involved through the training council, looking for places to utilize. So they were going to provide some grant funding, but it wasn't going to be a big enough project for them. So that expanded quite a bit, size and scope. Now, if that's going to be dropping off, we have to look at trying to scale it back a little bit again. The police foundation was really dedicated to trying to raise a pretty good portion of money for this. Unfortunately, as we all know, the fundraising has been very difficult during this time. So that's also dropped off. So, it's something that I feel is very important. It certainly has a place in our future. But I also understand with the current conditions, financial conditions, probable loss of grant funding, the state of finances locally. It's something that, we're trying to reassess. It's difficult because there are just so many variables involved as far as the scope of the project. I don't know if you looked at the schematic design that was done at all. There are a couple different options as far as how to design the actual range, whether it was a berm, whether you had a roof, whether you had ballistic baffles. The absolute safest option is the absolute most expensive option. So, that's another thing that would have to be assessed. And the level of the types of equipment that you use can vary greatly. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's very hard to nail down an actual cost. The DPW has asked that we put a separate access route in rather than going through their main gate, which I think is completely reasonable. But again, there's another cost associated with that. We have to run power out there. So in talking with National Grid, obviously there's a cost associated with that. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but as far as in the ballpark, that's where we're at.
Thank you.
We're just not ready.
Sorry, go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, we're just not ready, to be honest with you. We don't have any hard numbers yet. We're still doing research, making calls, trying to do the best we can, our due diligence. But as I said, we pushed it out. We may have to push it out further. We don't know, what local receipts, what we're going to look like in the next year or two as well. So there's a lot of unknowns out there right now, but we're committed to the project. We're committed to finding outside funding sources whenever possible. And hopefully next year, we'll have some positive news to share with the committee.
Thanks. My only other question was just when does the state let you know? When are they? What's the timeline on them calling the grant funding a go or a bust? Is it a calendar year, fiscal year? Do you know how they run?
I don't know. I'm going to continue to make calls and try to find out. Positions have shifted with different equipment needs and different things that the state is funding right now. But as soon as I have some answers, I'll definitely share that with the committee.
Great, thanks. Any other?
Lisa, can I just ask a question? So Jeff, you had started with this. At this time, should we put, I know you don't have a number either, but at least to have a holding place, should we keep that on the fiscal year 24? Do you think it's better to push to fiscal year 25?
I would keep it there for now, and then I'll let you know as soon as possible, as soon as we hear, because if that grant funding, which is a large grant, 7-figure grant, is not available, we're going to have to again go back to the drawing board. The deputy chief, like I said, I give him kudos, all the hard work he did in this project. We're going to have to revamp the whole thing again, and pricing, just like Maureen was saying, pricing changes. Things change from when we started this to today and tomorrow. So as soon as we know, though, we'll share it.
Thank you.
I don't know if there are any other questions on that. I can move on to the animal control. So animal control falls under the supervision of the police department. And right now, Melinda McKendrick is operating a 2002 GMC 2500 pickup. It's got approximately 120,000 miles on it. It's a DPW hand-me-down. We're putting good money into bad into it. It's got no air conditioning, which isn't good for Melinda. It isn't good for the animals that she's transporting. So we believe it's time to replace that vehicle. Like I said, it's a 2002. And that, as you can see, has a cost of $28,435, fully equipped, fully outfitted. It's not a hybrid vehicle. They don't make that vehicle in a hybrid, but it is very fuel efficient. And I think if it's purchased, it will suit the program for years and years to come. Are there any questions on animal control's capital? So the other three vehicles are for the police department. It is to replace one of our detective vehicles, which I believe DC can help me. It's a 2008 I believe.
To 2000, about 115,000 miles on it right now. So,
Correct. Again,
you know,
good money into bad. The other is to add a vehicle and replace a Mark Cruiser. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy Deputy Knight to answer them.
Jeff, 2 cruisers, 1 detective vehicle. What's the? Sorry, I missed it when you said that. So
One vehicle would be for one of our detectives. Another vehicle, again, we'd be looking hopefully to purchase a hybrid, would be for a position that I'm creating. If that position is not approved at town meeting, I would also cut that vehicle, but that is for a lieutenant's position. And then we're replacing 1 marked cruiser that just, it needs to go. High miles, idling hours, etc. DC, did I miss anything with that?
no, I mean, I could get into our fleet, but I think it pretty much covers it. We have about, we still have a 2015 Ford utility. We have 4 2017 Ford utilities. So yeah, there's a, you know, the earlier part of the fleet is starting to get aged.
And quite frankly, with the SUVs, there's still an unknown. They're still fairly new, as the deputy was saying. And we're still trying to figure out these hybrids too. They're a little different operating, just to make sure that they're conducive, you know, for policing. But we have one coming in soon, a couple of them actually. So we'll let you know moving forward how that's working, you know, how they're holding up.
I recall when we switched over to the SUVs, you know, I've been doing this too long on town committees. So how are the, I guess, how has your experience been just with the SUVs in general?
I mean, it's good. There are some things that we need to replace on them. There's some issues, but it's been good. The issue is obviously sustainable Westborough. We're trying to get away from just the gas-operated models. We're trying to go to the hybrids. So we're going to let you know how that's working out, so we can actually hand them down when now we have to trade them in. Quite frankly, they're not worth much once we're done with them. But we'll keep you in the loop on that as technology changes. And like I said, the fleet's in decent shape overall. When we come to you, it's because it needs to be replaced or it needs to be added due to, you know, personnel, adding personnel, etc. But if we don't add, like I said, certain personnel, you know, obviously there'll be a reduction to our capital request.
Just one follow-up then. The hybrid, these hybrids now that we're going to start getting in, do they look like the current model? Is it really the only difference just that it's a hybrid engine in basically what we recognize as our SUV cruisers?
Yeah, it's a little different. We actually picked one up today. And you know, you go to start it and the officer thought it was on. It just, the engine doesn't turn on until you start driving away. So there's going to be some us getting used to this and seeing how they operate. I'm hoping it's just a matter of training and everything's going to be fine. But you know, we're committed to hybrids whenever possible. Like I said, the animal control vehicle couldn't get one hybrid. You know, and like I said, it needs to be replaced. But we went as, you know, economically fees conscious as possible, you know, by going with that transit van. And we think it's going to serve the town of Westborough for many, many years. I'm hoping 15 years.
So Chief, following on Lisa's questions, and I apologize because I should know this, but the hybrids we're purchasing, are those cruisers or are those more like detective vehicles, etc.?
There's the Ford Explorer type vehicle called the Interceptor.
Okay.
They're just a hybrid cruiser.
Okay.
Same basic body design. You know, our equipment will fit in them.
Yeah, it's the police utility. The only thing you'll notice is the front grille looks a little different. If you're looking at it from the front, that's really about the only difference you're going to notice. But it is the police utility package. It's got the upgraded suspension and the brakes and everything. So
Okay.
Nice to see them bringing that technology. I hope it does work well for you, because You know, I remember the time when they were like, sorry, doesn't exist, can't do it.
Yeah.
And nice to see that they worked on it.
And like I
The-
said, Sustainable Westborough has been great. They applied for some grant funding that is, help cover, the added costs. So it's a win-win.
These guys ask, Chief, just as you go out, Chief and Deputy Chief, as you go out the future years, I noticed that the fiscal year 23, I'm assuming is that an additional car purchase in that year, the 240,000 request for that?
So, yeah, so actually we already cut one this year. We were initially going to be asking to add two because we were hoping to add a couple of more positions based on our staffing study, and we've cut those. So again, looking forward to next year, again, we were hoping to be able to add some positions based on our staffing study. If that doesn't come to fruition, then again, we'd be cutting some of those additional cars.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd.
There's just so many unknowns right now as we all move forward. So we're kind of we're taking it day by day, just trying to, if we have a need, we're going to come to you, and we're going to be as responsible fiscally as we possibly can in these very unprecedented times.
Any other questions from the committee? All right. Thank you as always.
Thank you very much for your time, and have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanks, you too.
You too. Okay. We're now actually ahead of schedule. Look at that. The last item on the agenda is approval of minutes, which were attached at the end of the long scrolling email that Ian didn't read.
Hey, Lisa, can I ask
You're
a
killing
question?
me.
Sorry, you admitted it. Yes,
I
Bob.
did.
Yes, Bob.
Not gonna lie.
I guess my question is, you have people coming in here for capital projects with the library and things like that.
Mhm.
And I felt like I was ambushing Maureen a little bit, but I don't think any of these committees, when they come in, think about any tax rate impact. And I think that should be a standard question from the committee is to have you looked at it. And we have debt policies in place, which probably most of these boards or committees don't know about. And, it just seems there's some disconnect somewhere.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Do something, but we don't, based on the policies, sometimes there's not going to be that flexibility.
I'm going to have to defer, I think, to Kim on this because that's where the town finance team and the folks who actually work for the town are different from those of us who are advising, I think. And I think there's a role for all, but I'm not sure what they are. So
how can you advise if you're telling them, yeah, okay, that looks good, but it doesn't really fit into the town's debt policy? I mean, it's...
Bob, the way Christy explained it, I think it was the last meeting, perhaps. This committee is really looking at the projects based on the merits of the projects. And then the funding piece of it needs to fit into some of those other things that you mentioned. What do we have for free cash? So those funding decisions aren't necessarily what this committee is tasked with deciding. It's really looking at the projects, and then based on which projects come up in terms of highest priority, then for the financial team to work to get into the budget in whatever capacity. Does it fit in the debt? Is there free cash? Is there, general fund, raise and appropriate? So that's something that is sort of a second look once we know what are the projects to focus on.
But don't you think it would be something that the committees ought to think about when they're bringing these projects forward, like as far as tax rate impact? I mean, wouldn't that be a basic question to ask them?
Well, I just don't know if that's the point of the analysis where where this committee stands. I think we get to say, if, you know, we need to hear from the departments, hear what they need. Full disclosure, tell us what you need. We're not saying we're going to approve all of it. Give us all of what you need, all of what you want, all of what you think might be nice. We rank accordingly to, you know, what does the town absolutely need based on the 3-point system that Kim forwarded us prior. You know, what are the things that are legal liabilities? What are the things that are necessities for maintaining an infrastructure in town? And what are the things that are probably optional? And then again, turning that back over, because for the first time in our existence as a committee, Christy said, listen to everything regardless of how much it costs, and give it scores on its merits, and then move it to the next phase where Christy and Kim and the finance team do some of that heavy lifting, because that's the stuff they look at it all day, every day. We don't, I mean, I don't have line of sight. Speaking for myself now as a moderator appointee, I don't even have the benefit of FinCom meetings to hear, you know, the inside scoop about a lot of that stuff. So I think we're just a step in the process.
Okay.
And I think they'll get grilled by others. Remembering my FinCom days fondly.
That's my expectation. Yes, that's where it could happen.
One of a few spots where the grilling and the math really take place.
Okay.
I think we're the big idea people now. You know, it's just.
I think it's a big idea, and I talked to Kim a little bit. It's a big idea, and we're going to be the record keepers, you know. And it's kind of and part of it is looking at not just year by year. I know it's always been this, but really being more kind of deliberate now of looking at everything to really balance things out. And I think from our side, Bob, somewhat related to what you said, but not what I'll call the kind of the nitty gritty details of impact on that, but really looking and saying, okay, well, you know, 2024, the way we're looking at it right now, we've got, just say, for example, we've got a multi-million-dollar shooting range for the police. We've got a library. We've got, you know, whatever else, and really saying, okay, you know, let's look at that and be able to have a plan that says, is that the right,
Sure.
you know, timing and impacts for the town? And part in our job, I think, as Lisa said, is really, you know, asking those questions about the merits of the projects and the, you know, requisite timing, and saying, okay, that's a nice to have. Can it get pushed to 2025 or 2026? Because 2024 just doesn't look good for a nice to have.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so we have minutes. Thank you, Sela, for our previous meetings of November 5th and November 12th. Starting with the 5th, does anyone have any comments, corrections, or issues with that document that they want to bring to the record?
I'm looking through it quickly.
Take a moment.
Yeah.
We're running ahead. We're good.
It's funny.
If there's nothing
Looks good for me. Yeah.
there's nothing jumping out, I will accept a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll move their acceptance.
Second.
Okay, I'll take a vote. I vote yes. Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes, I was non-voting at that meeting, but I've reviewed the minutes and they're correct, so.
And you are eligible to vote now, so that is, or are you eligible to vote? I guess I should check. Have you been sworn in?
Yes.
All right, then fantastic, you can vote. And Leah?
McLean, yes.
Okay, it is unanimous. We will accept the minutes for the 5th, and then moving on to the 12th. There are
You
no.
want a motion to accept?
I've given Ian 30 seconds to read them.
Yeah, it's pretty short. That one's shorter, so I'm fine.
You're good? Okay, I will take a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make that motion to accept the meeting minutes of November the 12th.
Somebody like to
those.
second.
I will
Okay,
second it.
great. We'll take our vote. Yes. Blaise Juski, yes. Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Leah?
McLean, yes.
All right. We have unanimous approval of both sets of minutes. And are there any other general comments, questions?
I had a question followed by a comment. I guess
Okay.
question, Kim, and I, in our side discussion the other day with Pete, I learned about the DPW taking over kind of a purview of existing real assets in town and looking at those existing assets versus future development. I'm struggling with all of these vehicle requests, candidly. And feeling like in this pivot, so this is the comment part of it. I guess the question part of it is there any individual in town government that looks after the entire fleet and acquisition? I'm talking about DPW, fire, vehicles, capital equipment in the form of vehicles. And I guess I'll direct that to Kim. Is any one person look after, or one department, I should say?
No, currently no. And particularly the way it's been separated, my understanding is historically police, fire, and DPW are kind of the three main entities looking at their own needs departmentally. And then the balance of the town's fleet, so things like the building inspectors' vehicles, some of those other fleet are cared for, if you will, through DPW, but they're not part of a larger plan at this point in time. That's what we're talking about trying to pull together.
Okay. Well, I would certainly vote to approve that, because I feel like each of the department managers is coming forward sort of with the same story, like we're throwing good money after bad. Well, according, let's see the maintenance records then. And, even the DPW, I think about a piece of commercial equipment as being hours of use versus its age. Some things can be and should be used forever, if they can be repaired and they operate according to standard. Certainly a police cruiser, a fire department piece of equipment, something else that has a useful life or a number of miles, it would just seem to me to be in the town's best interests to know where those fleet, the 1-ton pickups for DPW, the cruisers, the things that are in constant need of replacement, perhaps not the, major fire engine, although once you established a schedule, you could put everything on it. But I don't feel a committee like this, I'm in a position to tell the fire chief or the police department that, it's not time to replace their cruiser. So in terms of capital planning, certainly these standard vehicles should be replaced on a schedule with their useful life. And I don't know, and there's a cost to that. I understand there's a buying schedule from the state, so there's nothing that we can do in terms of procurement cost. So therefore, the whole fleet ought to be looked at so that we know as a town what we're facing and that we can spread that cost out, year by year. It's never going to go away. There would be the notion of spreading that replacement cost out or staggering it in such a way that it's useful. But that's sort of where I come down on, essential or not essential. I can't comment on. They say it needs to be replaced. It's certainly their life and safety. They're our first responders. That, defaults to the top. But we're not getting a holistic view. And as we look at electronic vehicles, hybrids, and some other considerations townwide, and there's grants available for some of that, but not, that to me requires kind of a look at the whole fleet. So I guess I made the point, and others may disagree, but that would put me in a better position of saying, okay, this is something, this piece of equipment still has some useful life. Can we defer this for a year, or can we pick up the cost, or can we look at an alternative, that sort of thing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but that is where we're trying to head towards,
Yes.
right? With the new
Yep.
system, if you want to call it that.
Right. I'm not sure we'll get everything under one umbrella, if you will, by the next cycle, but I think definitely we are on that path.
But Kim, also, we have I believe, a fleet inventory for those non DPW fire. I mean, they have them individually, but there's also one for the remainder of the town, if I'm not mistaken, of the fleet that's there. So, I think to Tim's point, sharing that too, and the status of that. But I think putting it all together and actually having someone responsible for that is a better program than we probably had in the past. It's an improvement. Mm-hmm. But there is that information. I think from what Tim's saying, it's probably important to share what we have now for the committee's use.
The schools also turn in and participate in our vehicles being on a master list because we track it for insurance purposes. So there is a master catalog but I think looking at, again, a vehicle cycle of when we know different rotations of replacement could be anticipated, and then a projection for when we would take a percentage of vehicles that should be electric or should be hybrid would be, again, and then there's the giant beast of the buses, which is, again, a whole separate thing. But we do participate in that process as well in terms of the cycle.
Yeah, and Tim, one thing I had talked to Kim.
I can't hear you at all.
Ian.
Has anyone
there?
Yeah, Ian, we lost you, Ian. Is
that better?
Yeah.
Yes, you went. It sounded like you were underwater there for a moment.
Start your comment. Okay. Thank you.
Maybe I was. No, I had spoken to Kim as well, I think similar in your fashion, because after the DPW, kind of looking at, the variety of equipment and different years, I think my take was similar. And then we were looking at, GASB depreciation schedules. And to me, that's a good thing to look at, but to me shouldn't drive a decision that they say useful life is 10 years. So after 10 years, this loader or whatever should be replaced. I think we've done a great job in the past, and the fact that something's 35 years old and still works and it's safe, that's great. I think I'm in agreement. I think, it's just, as we move forward, it's looking at those things that I think you said it better than I did, more eloquently, that, some things are used in terms of hours versus some things that are used, every single day for long periods of time, like cruisers, fire trucks, ambulances, et cetera. So I think it is important. I think well stated on your part.
And I think the departments have, just in the time that I've done this kind of thing here, whether it's on FinCom or CapEx, I feel like they've been asked to sort of standardize some of it, and some of that has been happening, certainly, where we've gotten idle hours tracked in cruisers, which actually makes a bigger difference to them than the miles that they drive, because they're literally running 24 hours a day in some instances. The new administration of DPW, if you will, is, just in the last couple of years, things are being laid out on a very organized, for someone like me who pops in once a year, like I feel like I'm seeing more of a, an organization and a schedule. So hopefully we can, parlay off of that previous work, and then whoever ends up being that responsible party or parties for watching over it all can take all of that work that all the departments have done to standardize and get a very good sense for all of us of what's important for which vehicles and what, what's the sweet spot where really you're pushing your luck, but if you don't get a new one, you know, and hopefully we can figure that out going forward.
Yeah, I think looking at that information on the fleet as a whole with some, even if we tapped into some external fleet management expertise, you know, it very well may make sense to be more aggressive about replacing certain pieces of equipment with new equipment and retiring it sooner because its residual value would be higher to the town, you know. Likewise, some other things. And then there's all this talk of hand-me-downs, which, you know, is being said in the terms of, well, we might not even have a vehicle if we didn't get a hand-me-down, you know. Well, it's just looking at it holistically. And I think we're all in agreement with that. And you can't, it's no criticism of where we are. It's the benefit of getting a 5-year look ahead, putting all of the assets in the fleet across department in one place. You get a better picture, and we'll be able to do a better job. So glad to hear that's kind of underway, or part of the master plan.
Kim, did you have a comment? Oh, sorry, Ian.
Yeah, I was just going to switch topics. Was you asked what other questions, was kind of whatever our next steps are. I think this was our last scheduled meeting, so it was more about, and I guess
that was what Kim's comment was, I'm sure.
Perfect.
So I just wanted to confirm that we are good to have our final meeting of capital project presentations next Monday, November 30th. The schools will be presenting, and then we have one request. The Open Space Committee is looking to come forward and seek funding to start replenishing the Open Space Fund. I talked to Mark Silverberg today. He's available. I might not have a project sheet for you until Monday, hopefully Monday morning. I will get you something in advance of the meeting, but those are the two presentations that we have left. So I propose if we meet at 5:30 next Monday, we can wrap up the presentations. If there's any additional information that anyone is looking for from any of the departments that have already come before you, let me know. I can reach out and ask for that and provide that for the meeting as well. After Monday's meeting, then we would probably look out to the following week to have a meeting to, the next step for the committee would be to prioritize the projects, and then we would have a meeting at that point as well.
Can I ask how you envision the prioritization under this new system? You know, we had these Mondo Excel sheets that you gave us before. Is it more just that we'll get a list and it'll be literally 1, 2, 3, based on the grid that you'd given us previously?
That's one possibility. This was something, if you want to take a minute to discuss this now, happy to. So that was a suggestion, was that we could have each individual committee member go through project by project, assign it a score. And again, we're focusing on the projects that are coming up for FY22. Assign it one of the ratings. We could bring that back to the committee. You know, I can strip names off of it so it's anonymous, but we could look at and then see if we can come to consensus on a rating for each project.
That sounds reasonable. I hadn't thought it much further than just putting my numbers on a grid. So that totally makes sense to me. Any other thoughts?
I think it makes sense to me. I think it goes, and being a numbers person, seeing it, I'm assuming we'll get a consolidated listing of it as well. We have the individual pages that we've looked at here, but having that listing down will at least help me in terms of, you know, the prioritization piece. So we just get a holistic look at it.
So that's what I just want to time after the meeting on Monday. To later in the week, get you something that pulls it all together, a single document, all of the projects in a single document with a summary at the beginning of that, with the requests, kind of a grid mapping out the departmental requests by each of the 5 years of the plan.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Look, we can try it if the process doesn't seem to work. But I think if we were able to come to consensus, it's hard to average those 3 categories. I'm not sure that would be meaningful to try to average it like we've done in the past, given how we're shifting to those categories. So I think if the committee could come to consensus.
That sounds good. All right. Any other last roundtable topics? I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Everyone wanted to stay.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll do a vote. Blaise Juski in favor. Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Leah?
Plain yes.
All right, that is unanimous. We'll see you next Monday at 5:30.
Have a good
Sounds good.
Thanksgiving, everybody. Good to see you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Same here.
Happy
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.